Yo, all my beautiful people. How are you doing today? My name is Tracy Lee, and you are at the Alternate Point of View. Welcome if you are new, and welcome everyone who are my OGs and have been with me from jump. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for watching my content. Thank you for liking, subscribing, and sharing. I greatly appreciate it. So today we are going to actually talk about a very, very sad story. And it is happening it's like an epidemic or something going on lately. And I don't know if it's lately or if it's just being highlighted more or what it is, but children, you guys, the kids are getting just, I don't know if it is something that is just this generation or if it is, um, maybe we didn't pay attention before, or maybe I really don't know, but kids are just being so mistreated by their very own parents. And where are the people that are around these parents and these kids? That's my biggest question. Like, where are the people that, you know, should be noticing the signs or should be saying something? So I want to talk about Giovanni Chulo. He's so cute. But his parents kept him in like a dog crate kind of. It's absolutely horrific details about this child. They stapled him to a wall. They shot him with BB gun. It just is absolutely horrific. The things that they did to him to make him suffer. Uh, they clearly were very bad people. I watched a couple of things on like Law and Crime and Court TV, and they basically were trying to say that, and these are the parents. This is the boyfriend, I believe. This is the mother. This is Giovanni Chulo, and they're trying to say that there could be possible mental health issues of some sort. They're saying that
this child and his siblings.
this is people that they're talking to, saying that there could be possible mental health issues or drugs involved or something like that. I don't know, because I've seen too many cases lately where you see parents that are treating their children so horribly. Look at Daniel Rodriguez in San Antonio. Look at Shonda Vander Ark. Look at there's so many cases that we have watched and been through. Harmony, it's the unimaginable, and they're by the hands of their own parents that this is happening. The abuse is absolutely horrific on a child, a defenseless child. And I don't know if there's a disconnect in being a parent. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not anything professional. I am a parent, and I do remember what it was like to go through the toddler terrible twos, the 5-year-old, 6-year-old tantrums. I remember going through the preteens, but I would have never imagined that for a second that I would staple my kid to a wall or anything like that. Those things wouldn't just come to my mind. It just doesn't make sense. And, the way this poor little boy suffered, you look at situations like Gannon, Stout, and you look at these terrible, horrific things that happen to these children. And this very same situation happened to Chulo. He was suffered blunt force trauma to his abdominal area so badly. Again, and you look at Christopher Greger with Corey, same situation, blunt force trauma. I don't understand what is going on with what is the children. The children need help, but we are not helping the children, and we're not doing anything. And I understand that our system is so broken. I understand that the main goal is to keep children with their parents. I understand that, we don't want to intervene, or it's not our business, or whatever. But I even saw an interview with the child's stepfather, and he hasn't seen this child since March. Uh, I'm just curious as to why people haven't seen the child, didn't question where he was, weren't curious about what was going on. And even the grandmother apparently was partially aware of what was going on. They had enjoyment out of the torture of this little boy. You have the parents laughing at what they're doing to him. They're sending text messages back and forth of the torture that they're inflicting on this 6-year-old. And it just seems like, are there that many evil people in the world? Or is there something wrong? Did we miss a step, miss a generation, what's happening? I don't understand. So poor Chulo, 6 years old, is being mistreated. And this is another case in Detroit, you guys. I don't understand. This prosecutor is the very same prosecutor who prosecuted the Ethan Crumbley trial, and she also prosecuted Ethan Crumbley's parents, which I also feel is kind of touchy, but it is what it is. I'm not saying I don't think parents need to be held accountable. I definitely feel like parents do need to be held accountable, but it does set precedence for something, that is a tangled web we're about to weave for things that you don't always have control over. But as far as these parents are concerned, I just don't find what they did excusable in any way, even to say that, well, drugs could have been involved, or there's mental health issues, or what have you. Where were the people that were surrounding them? Where were the people that were involved in this child's life? Where was the school? Did he go to school? So I want to play the DA's, basically her press conference, to see exactly what they are charging these parents with, which they say is the worst child abuse case that they have seen. But I don't know. I've watched some pretty awful cases. I mean, Shonda Vander Ark was pretty bad. Gavin Stout Harmony, that was awful. I mean, I don't know. Just when you think you've seen it all, you haven't seen it all. So
allegedly killed at the hands of his mom and her boyfriend. The latest jailed couple has been denied bond out in Michigan as the accusations against them are made public. We're getting insight on the investigation with former crime scene investigator and forensic expert Alina Burrows. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A little 6-year-old boy, Giovanni Jennings, who was called Chulo by his family, died from horrific injuries that prosecutors say were the result of child abuse. July 30th, first responders were called out to a mobile home community in Oakland County, Michigan. Chulo was in one of those homes, unconscious and with injuries all over his body. He was rushed to a hospital. He was transferred to a children's hospital, but he died around midnight. The little boy's mother, 25-year-old Elaine Jennings, and this mother's boyfriend, 32-year-old Daniel Giacana, were arrested originally on charges of lying to police and possession of weapons. But then on Friday, the prosecutors announced they were upgrading those charges. And before we even dive into that, and there is a lot to get into, I want to bring in former crime scene investigator and forensic expert Alina Burrows to talk about this. Alina, thanks so much for coming on. I want to get your take on the different parts of this investigation. But first, let me start. Have you heard about this case? Is it, or does this, maybe you haven't heard of it, but it's eerily similar to what you've seen before?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have heard of this case, and I could have predicted some of the details before I heard them because this is such a familiar story, sadly.
Yep. It's unfortunately, we've been covering a lot of them here on Sidebar, which, I think it aggravates and it frustrates a lot of people, as well as saddens us about why this is happening. But let's go through it. Because on Friday, the prosecutor in this case, Karen McDonald, held a press conference. Let's take a listen.
Last week, my office filed charges against his mother, Elena Jennings, and her boyfriend, Daniel Giacchina, for lying to the police, and additional charges against defendant Giacchina for improperly possessing weapons and ammunition because he was already a convicted felon. But it was clear from the evidence that we saw that there was a pattern of abuse that led to Chulo's death. My office, in conjunction with the Madison Heights Police Department, has spent the last week performing an intensive review of every piece of available evidence, including cell phone evidence, photos, and evidence that was seized in search warrants. Combined, we have spent over 100 hours reviewing extremely disturbing videos and photos, as well as text messages and Facebook chats describing the horrific things that happened to this 6-year-old boy.
And it's our understanding the charges were upgraded to murder and first-degree child abuse. So, Alina, we are seeing this now in this day and age, practically in every case that we cover, this mountain of digital evidence for investigators and prosecutors to sort through. What's your reaction to those numbers we just heard?
It's an unfortunate circumstance that we see these child abuse and homicide cases occur so frequently. The amount of digital evidence that we're seeing, either communication via text message or social media, it ends up being more evidence to prove the case. So to me, it's a great thing to have. It's going to make the case a lot easier to charge.
And you know what's even more alarming is that reporting indicates that Jennings allegedly directed Giacchina to abuse her own son, and the two had laughed about it on text message. That's the allegation, which, if true, I don't know, that feels like walking yourself straight into a conviction.
Yeah, certainly seems like an aggravating circumstance to me. This wasn't a child that was exhibiting terrible behavior. The child was trying to drink. The child was trying to look out a window, and the child was trying to urinate. And these are things that they're considering punishable offenses.
And according to the Special Victims Unit investigators, Chulo also had 2 younger siblings who seemingly had to witness this alleged abuse. The details are just absolutely atrocious. The Oakland County prosecutor explained what the state believes happened in that mobile home to just illustrate why the charges were upgraded.
As we carefully sifted through the evidence, what we found can only be described as horrific. The allegations are that Chulo was confined to a pen in the defendant's bedroom. He was beaten. He was bound to the wall by using a staple gun to his clothes to the wall, which forced his face into a corner. He was badly injured, but he was not taken for medical treatment because his mother knew that a medical examination would reveal the abuse.
And Alina, that is eerily similar to what we've heard in the past. Maybe
Yes.
Your reaction hearing up at the idea that they don't want to take him to medical professionals because, they don't want to get in trouble.
Right. It's probably the same reason that he wasn't in school. I know in the state of Michigan, school's not mandatory until the child's 6 years old. So depending on when his birthday fell, he should have either been enrolled in school or being actively attending school. And a lot of times when law enforcement becomes aware of abuse, it's through teachers. I've worked plenty of cases where a child's maybe dirtied up their shirt on the playground, and the teacher goes to change their shirt and sees scarring or bruising or pattern injuries that indicate child abuse. So it doesn't surprise me that the parents were either trying to keep him out of school or certainly not calling for medical attention.
Well, and let's be clear about this. So first of all, we're going to get into more of the idea of the physical evidence or the actual evidence that would back up these claims in a minute. But this is the mother and the mother's boyfriend, because here's what's happening with the father. Investigators say that Jennings lied to them, that she pointed the finger at Chulo's biological father. So police end up arresting the dad, but they determined he wasn't anywhere near Chulo during the time that he died. And prosecutors say they officially eliminated him as a suspect. Alina, is that common? Pointing the finger at another parent at another caretaker?
Yeah, I've frequently seen not as much the biological parent, but a boyfriend or somebody that's in the house, not especially one that's related to the child, but perpetrating the abuse. And then it's not uncommon to see them put the child, depending on age, put the child in a playpen or in a carrier or do something and then just say that they happened upon the child and the child was unconscious somehow. And then autopsy obviously would reveal further, but this isn't a surprising circumstance.
Or especially if there's a custody dispute, not a custody dispute, they have a custody arrangement, and the child goes to live with one parent for a weekend, comes back, and if they die, there's so many times they're like, well, it was something from the parent did over the weekend, and then you're dealing with the timing of the injuries, the proximity of the injuries, how quickly the injury resulted in the death, and that becomes kind of a complicated situation too when you're seeing joint custody of a child.
Definitely, but when we look at things like bruising, anybody that's ever received a bruise knows that it goes through stages. And it initially might be red, and then it goes through like a purple blue stage, and then the very last stages of bruising are like a yellowish or a green. So there's a pattern of abuse that we see here through multiple injuries. And then these bruising almost have a time stamp or a date stamp on them. So within a window, you can't say that the child was abused 24 hours ago if he has green, yellow bruising, because those are clearly healing and are past that stage. So I'm sure that was one of the first things they're looking at are the injuries consistent with the timeline given?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because the chief prosecutor, unfortunately, we have to go through this because it's important to understand why the charges were upgraded and what the evidence is. The chief prosecutor listed the parts of Chulo's body that were injured during this alleged pattern of abuse.
Photos taken during autopsy in Wayne County revealed that Chulo had bruising and laceration on his entire body, including to his scalp, temples, lips, inner mouth, cheeks, forehead, chin, shoulder, forearms, fingers, thumbs, back, buttocks, inner thighs, knees, and shins. Notably, Chulo had pervasive bruising to his abdomen, which was also bloated and distended. He had an apparent BB wound to his shin. First responders and emergency room personnel noted extensive external injuries as well. Cell phone evidence has revealed that Chulo Jennings was being severely abused by the defendants. Chulo was beaten by Giacchina on multiple occasions. While that abuse sometimes happened while Jennings was at work, Jennings was aware of it and approved of the physical assaults, and at times even encouraged Giacchina to abuse Chulo. The abuse involved physical violence and assault, including shooting at Chulo with a BB gun. For punishment, Chulo was confined to a pen in a corner of Giacchina's and Jennings' bedroom, where he was left to try and sleep on a wooden slat measuring 11 inches by 36 inches. A black curtain was put in place so Chulo couldn't see out, and barricades were used to keep him in place.
This is such scary stuff. And you think to yourself, how can people allegedly do this? What do you even know about the people in your life? What do you know about the people you surround yourself with? It's scary to think about. But that is why we are so excited to partner up with Finder. This is a sponsor of
Testimonial evidence in this case. We have digital forensics in this case. So while this is certainly terrible for us to look at, I don't think this case is going to be particularly challenging to prosecute.
Have you ever heard? I mean, every child abuse case is pretty graphic and terrible, but there's certain elements to this one that I haven't even heard before. The stapling to keep somebody in place. What do you make of this?
It unfortunately looks like in this case, when we see biological parent, step parent, or biological parent, boyfriend scenarios, it looks like they're almost using the abuse of this child as an experience to bond them in their relationship. Many times we see somebody acquiescing to the other that have differing opinions on how to punish a child. But here it actually looks like they were relishing this and using this as an experience to become closer as a couple.
Yeah. And before I even go into the next piece of evidence, as if the text messages, the injuries, the physical evidence from the home wasn't enough. I'll get to something else in a second. But so common in these cases, right, is, well, the injuries could have been caused because the child is messing around. They're on the jungle gym. They fall down. They use the idea of the youth of the victim to say they're tumbling around. It's their own. They have knocks and injuries all over themselves. They always have injuries.
Okay, so this has like Shonda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson like all over it, because the data and the trail from their phones is mind-boggling. The fact that they were texting and she was controlling the situation from her phone, telling him what to do, and he was doing it, but he chose to do it. He was getting enjoyment out of it, and he was doing it. They were laughing about it. That's just pure disgusting. And I don't understand what joy they were getting out of it. And honestly, the only thing I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that she either hated the baby daddy so much that this is what she just looked at that child and looked at him as an object instead of her child, and didn't care, obviously. But for them to do such horrific things to a child is just disgusting. And to communicate about it, and for her to direct him on what to do, and for them to be in agreement on it, that to get two people to be that sick Just I don't understand. Also, I believe maybe possibly she may cut a deal. So this is where you get that immunity deal, that plea bargain deal in. So she could cut a deal to put him away for a longer term than she gets, because he was there at home while she was working. Obviously, he's a felon, so he probably didn't have a job. So she was working. So he was the one doing all the active action. Okay. She was instructing it, but he was actionable. So she may be the one who gets the deal first if she will tell on him and turn on him. So that could be a possibility, I would think, much like what happened in the Sean Finnegan trial, where Rebecca Dishman got, I mean, I wouldn't call it a deal, but she got life in prison plus 50 years. She didn't get the DP like Sean Finnegan did, but at that point, what really does it matter? She's going to be in prison for the rest of her life. So I would say that that's what this person is going to do, is she's going to cut a deal and try to get less time. But either way, they're both. I mean, I don't understand it. And I don't know where the rest of the family was and how they avoided the family seeing him.
For defendants like these defendants in this kind of case.
Kids are going to have injuries, certainly. And any parent knows where those injuries are. They're on knees from falling down, skinning knees, falling off bikes, elbows, any areas of prominence. When we see things like what I would expect on this autopsy, he's got bruising certainly covering the vast majority of his body. That is not normal unless the child has a medical condition that leaves them very prone to bruising or to injury. So it's okay for a child to have a few bruises here and there on an elbow or a shin. It's not okay for the child to have injuries on buttocks, on thighs, on their scalp, on their legs, on their arms, on their face. And what I would anticipate would be injuries on the interior lips. A lot of times, forcefully putting a hand over the face will cause the teeth to bruise the softer tissues of the mouth. Those are not typical injuries that a child would receive from playing.
Now, remember, I said there was another piece of evidence. Well, prosecutors say that Jennings and Giacchina, they bought a home security camera, and they set it up to monitor not intruders like normal people would, but rather to monitor this 6-year-old boy as he was essentially confined to a corner in the room. That's the allegation, that the two would allegedly watch the camera feed, punish Chulo for any misbehavior like urinating, drinking, leaving in the corner, looking out the window. Again, more potential digital evidence for investigators used to potentially convict the couple. Alina, I'm surprised that if they were so concerned about getting caught and wouldn't even want to go to, a medical examiner, medical professionals to treat the injuries because they were afraid of getting caught, why would they document it like this? That's the part that seems so strange.
Absolutely. And when we see child abuse on children who receive injuries on a routine basis, oftentimes the parents do try to keep the injuries somewhere where clothing would conceal it, so that if they're out in public, nobody can recognize this. So we see a lot of injuries on the back or the stomach, things that a regular t-shirt would cover. Here, it doesn't seem like the parents are concerned about injury showing on most parts of his body. The fact that they purchased this camera indicates too that they took time. They're taking time to think about this. This is not a spur of the moment. The child's done something terrible and they, grab him and, give him punishment. This is a well thought out, timed. They're spending money on this. There are a whole lot of things here, in addition to the fact that they're creating more evidence that are going to end up helping the case.
Prosecutors, they also found guns in the home, including a ghost gun, which is an unregistered firearm that's compiled from different parts, from different places, so it's untraceable. Take a look at this.
A photograph recovered from the cell phone analysis depicts Giacchina in the middle of two young children who are handling the ghost gun and the BB gun. On July 26th, a photo from Jennings' phone depicts two children who are each pointing a gun at a third child. The third child has his hand up, and the laser from the ghost gun is illuminating his hand.
As if that wasn't terrifying enough, it gets even worse because Chulo's 4-year-old sibling participated in a forensic interview with special victims investigators and said that the two had been shot with a BB gun at one point too. Investigators even, and this is what we heard in the press conference too, that investigators reportedly found BBs in the wall of the home. And there is one line from the reporting that gets me particularly. It's that this 4-year-old allegedly told investigators, quote, "Chulo died all day and Danny was there," meaning Giacchina. Alina, talk to me about forensic interviews with children, because I imagine that has to be a very, very delicate but important part of the investigation.
Extremely important. Children are susceptible to having adults lead them in a certain direction. So that person that's conducting that interview has to be very cautious and ask a lot of open-ended questions. For instance, you can't say, "Did you see so-and-so shoot with a BB gun?" Because then they have the imagination, they have this idea that took place. So you would have to just ask them, what happened? What have you seen? Did you see Danny that day? Did you see Chulo that day? But that quote just sums up the horror and the innocence of all of this.
And you might be asking, well, where was Child Protective Services, right? Where was CPS? Yeah. Well, when asked about whether CPS had been contacted about Chulo or the suspects before, The DA said she couldn't comment on that.
All children have a right to grow up in a home free of fear. This child and his siblings suffered unimaginable abuse and lived in fear every day. My office and the Madison Heights Police Department are committed to using every resource available to us to get justice for Chulo and hold the people responsible for his death accountable and to seek punishment that reflects the horror of his death.
So, Alina, yes, hopefully that's true, and hopefully they're able to fully prosecute this and get justice. But the other, and look, the two individuals here are innocent until proven guilty, although, as we mentioned, the evidence looks really, really bad against them. I am curious about why no comment regarding CPS. Is it because it's too early in the investigation?
That kind of stood out to me as well. Maybe they aren't willing to release names of people that, maybe alerted CPS to this. I'm not really sure exactly what that means. But I would have to think that somebody outside of these two individuals and the children knew this was occurring. Do you never have somebody over to your house? Do they never see this child, ask about this child? Somebody had to have known, and it had to have been excused away as, well, he was being bad and he had to be punished. This just tells us all that we have a role in this. We all have to take a responsibility. If we see a child with injuries like these, if you're out shopping and you see this, make a call. The worst thing that happens is there's nothing to investigate, and the best thing that happens is you save somebody's life.
I hate covering these kinds of cases. I really do. They're the toughest for me to cover. But I always say to myself, it's important, honestly, to get the story out for the particular victims and their family members. But like you said as well, this could be eerily similar to something that somebody else is observing right now. And if it's a way to save or protect a life, that's honestly the silver lining in all of this. But it is such a tragic case, and our hearts and prayers go out to Chulo's family. Alina Burrows, thank you for coming on. Before I let you go.
So yes, that's my question. Where was CPS? Where are the family members? Where are people wondering how Chulo is doing? But at the same time, the same thing happened with Shonda Vander Ark with Timothy. Also, the same thing happened with the Ferreters when it came to their teenage son. They were doing the same thing. It's kind of strange, but, a lot of people just don't pay attention. I live in a neighborhood and I don't know my neighbors. Back in the day, you used to know your neighbors. Okay. Back in the day, everybody knew everybody. You could depend on your neighbor. You could go over to your neighbor and say, hey, your kids used to play with your neighbor's kids. Now it's not the same anymore. Everybody minds their own business. So it's just not the way it used to be. So I can see where people would be wondering, where are people? Where are they? Why aren't they asking questions? But I could say people don't care. They don't care that you, if it's not happening to them, they don't pay attention. So it's really sad, but there are a lot of lives, a lot of things that could be happening right next to you, and people just keep walking, or they keep passing by, and they just don't stop it. So you never know, and it's so crazy. But if you see something, say something, and that is just such a crazy statement that you think sounds corny, but it's true. If you see something, say something, especially when it comes to children or defenseless old people or animals, people that can't defend themselves. We should be there. We should be the ones to stand up and say something. People who are being wrongfully accused, wrongfully convicted, children who are don't look like they are being with the right person. But people now are so afraid to say anything because they're afraid they're putting themselves in a situation that might be called, racist, or it's not PC, or it's not, whatever. So everybody just kind of stays out of it. They don't want to be a part of it because they don't want to be labeled as something. But you could be hurting someone instead of helping. So I just feel like this is a very, very sad situation. Obviously, poor Chulo is gone, and we pray for his family. If he has any family, we pray for his father. I just don't know where his father was, why he never got to see him, and how she could blame his father if he wasn't even in the picture, really. I don't know. I'm not really sure where his father was. So I believe we're going to see which one's going to flip on the other first to get that plea deal. So I think with his record, he's sunk already because he's already a felon. So I just find it strange that, you know, they would invest in a camera, they would invest in these things to do all of this, and they lived in like a trailer. Okay. So, but I don't know how people didn't notice. And obviously the other two children were too small to say anything. And I guess they didn't want anything to happen to them. And that's really horrifying. That's a horrifying way to live for these children. And these are things they're not going to forget. They're old enough to remember, or they will have some type of flashbacks when they're older that's going to bring this up to them. So I hope that we can stop seeing some of these child cases, but I'm afraid they're just going to keep going. But this is very similar to so many that we've seen recently. And I feel in fear they're just going to keep getting worse and worse. And I hate to say that this one's the worst that we've ever seen, because someone out there seems to keep topping the other. But that is another case that is going on. I don't know if it will go to trial because they might plea out. But if I know that prosecutor, she's going to want to take it to trial. She's not going to plea this sucker out. She might give one of them a plea deal, but she ain't giving both of them a plea deal. She's a pretty tough cookie. So I appreciate everyone watching my channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. Also, don't forget this channel is not monetized. So if you would like to support my channel, please buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Racy0000. I would really appreciate it. You can also PayPal me or Cash App me. I will put that in the description as well. So I appreciate everyone who supports this channel. I have new merch that will be posting soon. So I hope that you will enjoy that. And I greatly appreciate everyone. So please like, subscribe, and share, and leave a comment. I love your comments. They're all so amazing. And I appreciate each and every one of you. 감사합니다.